When I was younger, I had an imaginary friend who lived in this massive, antique dresser. We'd chill out, and I vividly remember him telling me stories, although I have absolutely no recollection of what they actually were. I remember one day talking to my parents about it. Dad traveled quite a bit, so he wasn't up to date with what I was into. And when I started telling him about my dresser buddy, he wanted to know his name. It was something innocent, like Peter or Patrick, but I can still see him going white in the face. I drew Peter/Patrick out for him, and the very next day, him and my uncle took out that dresser and burned it. It wasn't until a few years later when I found out my dad's little brother, my uncle, also had the same friend, with the same name, who lived in the same antique dresser. After a few months of typical imaginary friend shit, my uncle started having night terrors and couldn't sleep because of Peter/Patrick. It got so bad that they had to move him out of his room before he managed to get back to normal. When my son was about 3, he had an imaginary friend in his room who he used to talk to all of the time. He would tell stories about things she would tell him, and we'd hear him chatting to her at bedtime. We thought it was pretty cute. After a few months, my son said he wasn't friends with her anymore. We figured he was over his phase of seeing her, so we were surprised to hear him still talking to her at night. Then he started not wanting to go to bed and having really bad dreams. At some point, we ended up asking a lot of questions about her. We had assumed she was a little girl, but apparently she was 47. She lived in the wall, and he stopped being friends with her because she wanted him to call her Mummy. Her name was something like Margaret. She wanted him to come and live in the wall with her. He had told her he didn't want to talk to her anymore, and she wouldn't go away. We eventually moved to another house, and he stopped talking about her. Funny thing is, when I was pregnant with him, living in the same house, I used to have dreams about a lady sitting at a dining table in our bedroom, except it was obviously a different era, and the room was not a bedroom at the time. The lady used to knit, and make me listen to her giving me parental advice while her 2 20-ish-year-old sons sat at the table quietly. I have a younger brother who had an imaginary friend when he was younger. He was also an avid sleepwalker. When he was around 3 or 4, he started talking to someone he called Freya. He described Freya as a dark-skinned man with little clothes who loved to hunt in the wilderness. Then one day he told me that Freya used to live nearby the house a long time ago, and some white people came and burned him alive and killed his village. Not exactly something you expect to hear from a 4-year-old. I remember I'd be in my room and hear him talking like he was having a conversation, and when I would try to check on him, he would immediately become silent and turn his head as soon as I peeked around the corner. Very unsettling. Well, my other brother, the middle child, was visiting his dad for the summer, but the day before he got back, my youngest brother told my mom and I that Fry does not like when brother is mean to me. He's going to scare him. The night he got home, my mom and I were downstairs and heard a scream that I can still hear to this day. We ran upstairs and found the middle brother swearing that someone was shaking his bed violently. It was a bunk bed. My youngest brother was sound asleep. A month later, my youngest brother took a bad fall and cracked his skull. He was fine, but never talked to Fry again after that. He would also sleepwalk constantly, and show up right next to my bed and stare at me until I woke up and promptly shit myself. One night I heard my front door open and close. Since it was 4 a.m., I went to check it out. I opened the door and found my brother at the very end of the yard, in the snow, only in his underwear, staring right at me. Then he slowly waved. Those shivers were not from the cold.